if he wasn't really right on top of that, it very possibly would have taken out most of the squad. It already was a mass cow. The size of it was just, I was directly across, but maybe 25 feet away or so. I was the only one who wasn't knocked over. Everybody else, Ross was thrown over the wall. You've got Johnston also thrown over the wall. And it was just, for a lot of people, it was one of the worst days of their life.
Welcome to Combat Story. I'm Ryan Fugit, and I served Warzone tours as an Army attack helicopter pilot and CIA officer over a 15-year career. I'm fascinated by the experiences of the elite in combat. On this show, I interview some of the best to understand what combat felt like on their front lines. This is Combat Story. Today we have our second account of brutal fighting within the Arghandab Valley of Afghanistan, this time from Will Yeske, former 82nd Airborne RTO at the time. Will went on to write the book Damn the Valley, 1st Platoon Bravo Company, 2nd of the 508th PIR, 82nd Airborne in the Arghandab River Valley of Afghanistan. Will recounts his experiences fighting and surviving in this brutal location, which takes place at the same time and just across the river from the experiences faced by our former guest, who many will recall, Andrew Bragg, who was in Charlie Company at the time. The IEDs, the suicide bombs, the ticks, and more come to life in both this interview and the book. Since leaving the service, Will has gone on to write 2 books, and despite initially dropping out of college, now has an Ivy League degree to his name. When many other kids in their mid-20s were partying and living it up, he elected to serve, and 1 year later found himself fighting for his life. I'm sure you're going to enjoy the multiple combat experiences that Will shares with us in this episode, and if you're like me, we'll be getting your own copy of his book. With that, please enjoy this very real experience of the Arghandab River Valley with none other than Will Yeske. Will, thanks so much for taking the time to share your story with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been great connecting.
And it's been just a couple weeks since I had a chance to sit down with Andrew Bragg, who is the one who ended up connecting us. Obviously, very similar pathways for the two of you for a period of time. Your book is Damn the Valley. His is Devil's Playground. Both chronicles your experiences in a similar part of the world. So I was just wondering, for people who have heard that interview with Andrew, what's y'all's connection? How should people think of the books differently, maybe, as we start framing this up?
So I know, like, even he probably mentioned it in there too, just with the amount of just variables that were so different within the Argandab River Valley there. I actually mentioned Charlie Company in my book. They were literally across the Arghandab River from us. So if you look at, I don't know if you've put any pinpoints and stuff on it, but if you look at where they were, you just go across the river. And I know I had mentioned, because it was a whole different ball game on their end. Theirs was much more kinetic. Like, we'd hear gunfights every other day over there, and we'd be begging our commander, like, hey, we're walking through minefields every other day. We're the 82nd Airborne. We love these gunfights. This is what we train for. Like, can we maybe divert, maybe do some patrols over there? Like let's help assist, because we were just itching to get at it. So, but yeah, no, many a time without actually meeting Andrew until much more recently, had overheard, and heard of and experienced a lot of the same things within the valley, but it just was a different scene for everybody. I mean, I know he had talked with somebody from the 101st that took over their AO, but through telling these different stories and through putting this stuff down, I know the first one who kind of brought the attention to it, that people would actually listen to these stories, was yet another book, Bravo Company by Ben Kessling. And, he was a Marine journalist, officer side, but still one of us, served in combat in Iraq. And he had interviewed a lot of us, and I ended up showing up in his book, Bravo Company. But it was through his stuff that it really inspired me to write my own stuff down. I talked to him and I said, there's a lot of scuttlebutt out there. There's a lot of guys that are upset that it's coming from the end of a journalist and not one of us. Like, what do you think? Is there any merit here? And he's like, I've heard your story. Like, put it down and see where it goes. And, as you could see on the shelf here, there we go. And then, Andrew Bragg had the next book coming out with the Devil's Playground. We've got something with the 101st. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's the Top Guns in the 101st. And Alpha Company has one that they're gearing up as well. And they're all starting to realize too that it was so different because of how we were broken up in element size and, the saturation of enemy out there. Bravo Company mainly operated in platoon sized elements. And it sounds like Charlie Company kind of did the same thing with 2 Charlie being separated from everything across there. And a lot of it was small kill teams, small man patrols, 14 men out at a time. So to deal with that and deal with manning and then deal with the losses and continually trying to keep guys in the towers and keep guys to be able to go out on patrol, because if you didn't, you're really giving a foothold there. And it was hell for a lot of people out there. I mean, a lot of people, as this thing develops and as these stories are coming out, a lot of people are going, hey, the Argandob, man, I served in that place. That place sucked, or I heard about that place. Even on, and I'm going to say Fort Bragg, but now Fort Liberty.
Yeah.
Right? They love that. There's still, talk of those days, 4th Brigade Combat Team, the Airborne and Special Operations Museum, when we, so that was actually one of the things that, he's got an event coming up too, but we did a launch event there, and the cover of the book has a flag on it. And that flag was actually, I talk about it in mine, but I didn't want to get too in detail. So it's from one of the guys that was former 1st Platoon. But that particular story is the enemy drove a VBID, so a vehicle-borne IED, as close as they could before they detonated to Cop Brunkhorst, where 2nd Platoon was staying. And they literally flattened the compound they were in. But there was pictures, somebody was snapping as they were recovering everything, and they saw the guys pulling the flag on, recovering the flag to put it back up. And it really just embodied what a lot of us thought was that feeling out there. We're getting beat up and we're going through hell, but damn it, we're in the 82nd Airborne. This is as far as you're going. We're not moving. We're here to stay, and it's them pulling that flag out of the ground and saying, we're still here. We're here to fight another day. And that is now actually down at the Airborne and Special Operations Museum. They put it into the DoD historical archives for perpetuity. Yeah. The flag, awesome. There's a bunch of other things in the pictures too. That's actually something that I'm trying to coordinate with Charlie Company, is having some of their guys do it. But there's stories in this book there's a PMAG, so a polymer magazine that was in one of the, Sergeant Lee. He was a team leader at the time, but it was a suicide bomber who had gone off, and a ball bearing from the vest pinged off of this PMAG. It's really what saved him. And this mag is split, and it was spewing bullets out. And the other team leader comes up, like after, as he's sitting in security, he's like, hey man, you might want to change out your mag. And he looks down, he didn't even know. So between that and just multiple other things, there's one guy has a grenade spoon. Someone decided they wanted to huck a freaking grenade over the wall, and it was those old Russian pineapple grenades, and it still has the Cyrillic on it. So this is now something that, we've curated something across social media. We've brought these stories out in books. You can go see it. I mean, not feel it, but you can see it in person right there in the museum. And this is stuff that guys can bring, their kids and their grandkids down and be like, this is what we went through. And this is why it's important, to know your background and to stand for something.
That's amazing. And I have to admit, until I had really dug in with Andrew, I didn't appreciate how difficult that fighting was in the Arghandab. Like, just from the aviator perspective, we just fly over so many areas, and it's just hard to understand what that fighting was like. But yeah. God, the enemy there, the terrain, and I know we'll get into it in this discussion, but the fact that there are this many books written and being written about that, it feels like it's coalescing around this one area that really was just diabolical for folks to navigate.
Yeah, and so there's some controversy there too. I know it kind of comes out in the foreword. General Ben Hodges came forward and wrote something that, was really, I was trying to find people to tie to, and I had contacted General Petraeus actually, and I know he kind of was one of the first endorsers. I didn't know that he also had that book Conflict coming out. He's like, I don't have the time to write a foreword, but I'll endorse it. I've read it. Yeah. this is a great book. The story needs to be out there. And he remembers us. There's actually guys that were in Walter Reed that have said, he's come up to them, they've been somewhere and he's actually come up to them and he knows them by name. It's just to have someone that has that much care and concern for the troops that are under him, that says a lot, and for General Hodges to come forward and write the foreword on there. I know the first one was actually very damning. And I kind of was like, I don't know if they're ready for that yet.
What was controversial about it? What was so spicy about it? Well,
it pointed a lot of fingers and it said, hey, we went into Afghanistan and we didn't have a plan on the way out. There was no exit plan. There was never an exit plan. This was just a perpetual war for the sake of having a war. And it was, he's not wrong in how he put it together and how he voiced the opinion there. It just was something that I felt it needed to be more focused on the job that the men did.
Yeah.
Especially this particular thing, it's a lot of the guys are out there, and I know you've seen it with Andrew, and he has his own stories about this too. Is there's a lot of us still hurting out there.
That surprised me most about and that's one of the things I'm very interested to hear your take on as well as we get into this, is just like the lasting effects of that valley on Andrew and the guys he knew.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's there was one of them. So there's just through this whole thing, people have been coming out of the woodwork everywhere. So if you go to the website, damnthevalleybook.com, there's actually something called the Wall of Stories on there. And I have everything from, there was an EOD guy that contacted me and he didn't know about this particular book. And he was on that incident to where we had our first KIA and Bravo company. And that was December 26th in 2009, the day after Christmas. And we're out on a patrol, and Specialist Johnston was crossing over. They were navigating across a wall with Specialist Ross, and they were trying to get onto a rooftop to get Overwatch. Put the gun in on the roof. We were setting in the patrol. We had been out for a little while, but it was one of those. We weren't far off of where Cop Ware was being established, and they had set up it was a complex with a toe popper that was daisy chained to a much larger charge in the wall. And he was directly on top of that charge when it went off. And I know some people, they ask, why and why did it happen this way? But in going back and talking to the EOD teams and the ones that did the evaluations, I can't remember the exact terminology and stuff for it, but going through and doing the assessment of
like
battle assessment, what happened.
Yeah. Okay.
And if he wasn't really right on top of that, it very possibly would have taken out most of the squad. It already was a mass cow. The size of it was I was directly across, but maybe 25 feet away or so. I was the only one who wasn't knocked over. Everybody else, it was just weird. But Ross was thrown over the wall. You've got Johnston also thrown over the wall. And it was just, for a lot of people, it was one of the worst days of their life. And for this particular EOD guy, it was. And here he is in Barnes & Noble looking for a book through the military section. And he sees, on the spine there, he sees the 82nd Airborne. He's like, I wonder. And he picks it up and he nearly lost it in the middle of the store. Yeah. He just was like, oh my God. And he wrote about it in a blog, and I came across it, or he sent it to me, and I was like, this should be out there. And it's through sharing those. There's Kiowa pilots that have actually, there was a day to where Lieutenant Mayfield was hit. He was in a different platoon. I think it was 2nd Platoon. And one of the Kiowa pilots sent in his journal from that day, as they were offering support when they hit this IED, and they actually landed one of them to attempt to pull him out because he had a head injury, and it was, he was just bleeding profusely from a head wound. And they're trying to get him out of there before he loses too much blood. So, it was just something that I know one of them got in trouble for it, because they did another exfil like that. So where there was a Kiowa pilot was hanging on the rails, and it was actually a female. They came back. Yeah, those pilots are just absolutely crazy. But it's a whole legend. There's like a lore behind it. I haven't tracked everything down on it. So, but just, it was Wild West out there.
That's
for
awesome.
sure.
Okay. Well, we'll get into the Valley. Real quick though, what got you into the military, Will? Like, how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? What the hell made you want to go and be in a valley like that to begin with?
I know, right? You would never think with the background there. So I grew up in a little small town up in Connecticut. I had actually wanted to join the Marines right out of high school. I had a cousin that was in the Marines. This was pre-war, so this was 2000, and I'd done the ASVAB and stuff. And my parents kind of were like dangling this. My uncle had been in the service too, and there was one of her brothers had been in Vietnam as a medic, and she was just worried, as moms would. And they kind of dangled this carrot out there of, hey, you know what, go to college first. We'll pay for college. And, if you want to go in as an officer or something after that, we're more than willing to support that. And I'm like, okay, that officer pay doesn't sound bad. Like, why not? Let's do it. Of course, life has its way. And, I ended up dropping out of college, doing I was racing cars. I had started up a privateer team, so doing rally racing with Subaru. So I was in a PGT class with guys like I'm trying to think of the guy that was Kenny Barstrom was that year, Travis Pastrana, Ken Block, all those guys.
Jeez.
Yeah, this was 2006, I want to say, between 2006 and then up to 8, which was really the heyday of American rally. And I was in a relationship with somebody that it fell apart. I was heartbroken. And I just let it all implode. Honestly, it was probably the best thing that ever happened. But I didn't see the writing on the wall, and I started going into a spiral, and I knew I needed to hit the reset button. And I had always felt that pull to be part of something larger than myself. And I was like, you know what, this is probably the last chance you're going to get to do it. You're in the middle of a war right now, but I kind of felt like it was winding down. So I went in on a special forces contract because I'm like, they're always in it, and why not? If you're gonna go to fight, why don't you fight with some of the best, the most highly trained? And then I find myself a year later in the ground of the Argandob, doing the same type of stuff.
Jeez. All right. So just quickly, then, you mentioned like coming out of high school that you had this inkling to go into the service. Where did that come from?
So there was, really, I kind of saw one of the things where my cousin had come from. He was sort of this beanpole kid and everything, and he was a little bit of the rebel and whatnot. Couldn't get totally everything together. And then I saw him after Paris Island and everything, and he was jacked, good looking, had a good looking girlfriend at the time, and was just like a stud at that point. And I'm like, man, like that total transformation there. So, really, there was a pull there. You could see the leadership being exuded. You could see that those disciplines and stuff. And really, I think a lot of it, just with everything I've learned along the way and things I've learned about myself, is it probably honestly would have been the best choice. I should have gone right out of high school. It would have instilled a lot of discipline that would have saved me a lot of pain along the way. That's for sure.
And then it sounds like if you advance to 2006, as you were saying, you've done all these things. When you go into service, I imagine you're the old guy.
Oh, yeah.
Are you just being ripped on routinely for being, and you're only what, like 26 or 24 or 5 at the time?
So 20, because I was 28 in Afghanistan, right? I'm trying to like roll it back. And
so you must have just been like, hey, old guy, get over here. Get some push-ups if you can make it.
I think the same age as our CO, so it was.
Oh, geez. And you said within a year, you're in the Valley, basically, from signing up to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's it was fast track because I came in March. It was just after my birthday. So it was like mid to late March. And then, you go through the pipeline of, you had basic training. We had Airborne. We had some guys pulled back out of that and stuff. They were just doing paratrooper things before they had the skill badge. So
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. We were all doing stuff. They were just the ones that got caught. But They went airborne school, and then it was SOP-C. So they dropped us off with a white bus off at the SF compound stuff, and we started doing SOP-C. I had gotten hurt during SOP-C, and of course, you're hearing all this stuff with selection, and it was October timeframe, and I'm like, man, like I don't know if I'm going to be able to do the trek at the end of it. You know, my legs really hurting. So I went to sick call, and they were like, yeah, we should definitely sit that next one out. You're going to be ready for the next, you know, not a problem. Talk to the commander, not a problem. And 2 weeks later, the sergeant major had come down and said, there's too many malingerers, you know, and they just cut everybody that was in med hold. No questions asked. There was like 400 some odd people. I don't even know how they get that many people in med hold. But they were breaking a lot of people off at the time. And, you know, ended up 4th Brigade. We trained up, you know, I showed up Christmas time. It was ITC, and then JRTC, and then see you later.
Oh, hey, man, just mentally, how did you handle that getting cut from
I was, you know, I there was something that was told to me, and looking back, I can see both sides of it, because I saw a lot of those guys from my basic training. There was actually quite a few of them that made it forward to group. We got beat on. It was almost like it was an experimental. There was 70 or 80 people who showed up to our basic training class, and it was like 42. But asking around and continuing to ask around, a lot of them were 18X program. So I'm like, are they beating the dog crap out of us to, you know, weed out the herd now? Like, I mean, it would make sense. But you know, that rejection and everything else, I was just like, you know what, I'll come back harder. I'll come back with more knowledge. But one of the cadre there, Sergeant, and for guys out there, they've probably heard that name before. This is a 7th group guy. Him and were over that part of the schoolhouse at the time, and they were just their games were ridiculous. There's a chapter I cut from the book, you know, just because I'm like, this is not a special forces book, but oh my god, the Halloween massacre that'll be something that'll show up in something later on.
Can you give us like a taste of that, Will?
So, I mean, imagine here is one of the most barrel-chested freedom fighter, you know, hoorah type person getting up out there, but showing up completely obliterated. And knowing that he can't smoke us because he's drunk, but he brought his like 8-year-old kid along. There was a lot to just scream wrong there from a lot of the guys. And it was just, I mean, he was like, we're going to be out here until X amount quit. I don't care. We can only send this many. And that is, I mean, all of those Camp McCall games, but they're on Fort Bragg, like rolling in the mud. I was in med hold at the time, and I'm looking out my window because I heard it, and I was just like, oh my god, like I know my buddies are out there, and I'm like, that has got to suck.
They're just getting smoked.
Yeah, jeez. It was purely a smoking to smoke to get people to drop.
Okay, well, you know, it just occurs to me like the fact that you get med holded, then they just cut everybody, and then you find yourself within a year in the Argandob. Like the trajectory of your life probably changed significantly based on that decision by that sergeant major.
Oh, for sure. For sure. But at the same time too, you know, that other one I was mentioning, you know, and he's like, he had said, because he was that old school guy who was, you know, they wanted guys with experience. And he literally said, I'm doing you guys a favor. You know, a lot of you guys are going across the street to the 82nd. Go learn now and come back with some knowledge under your belt, and you'll be all right. You know, so when I showed back up, there was actually a cadre there that had been there, and he recognized me and he was like, hey, you know, it took a while, but how you been? And I'm just like, well, that was fun, you know, and we talked a few, and he's like, well, glad you're here.
So it sounds like you had a good attitude for it, which is awesome. If we talk then about you getting ready to go down range, like a lot of these guys, had they already been in the unit together before you arrived? Or are you kind of the new guy?
Definitely new guy, but there was a mix. I was kind of given when I showed up, they had said, you know, hey, you're in shape. Who's going to Ranger school like the 82nd normally does? And I was sort of in between going to Ranger school with one of the other guys, but he had been there for a while, or staying for ITC and, whatever else might may. And I opted to stay just to be able to train up with those guys. I'm honestly glad that I did, because when we got overseas, it's to the point of we had trained so much and been pushed so hard by, the command team, which was Lieutenant Colonel Genio and Command Sergeant Major Puckett. I mean, they pushed us out, but they knew what we needed. They knew that it was going to be tough out there. So it was really good that when those tough times came, that we had the experience that we had in ITC. And I mean, it was cold. There was guys that we had one guy go down from hypothermia. It was so chilly, and you're thinking North Carolina, but then you find yourself in the Argandob, shivering, burning cow manure to try and stay warm in one of the little compounds, as we were infilling into the Argandob. And it was like, hey, you're staying here for 3 days now that we have a spot. This is where we're building it. And you're like, okay, where's resupply? We only came in with assault packs, 2 MREs a piece. Well, we'll get here when it gets here. And when guys are pulling radishes out of the ground, because you're in a radish field is where we established the outpost. We're pulling radishes out of the ground, just gnawing off pieces of them. You start to wonder, like, what's going on here?
Oh my gosh. All right. So we have an idea, obviously, from listening to Andrew and then what we're about to hear from you, how bad the Arghandab is. As you're getting ready to go in, what's your impression of this valley, your AO? What is the command team telling you about how hard this is going to be?
So really you have to back up, because my book doesn't just go straight into the Arghandab. It kind of follows the journey of, that talks about, hey, this is the journey of somebody joining up lower enlisted straight from the bottom and ends up in war. So, I mean, I kind of talk about the basic training and jump school just briefly. But we started out in Helmand province. So when we showed up to Afghanistan, it was direct cut, like executive orders from President Obama. We were actually slated for Iraq, and that's really what the type of fight that we had trained for. It was door to door, door kicking, like clearing out. And then it was like, hey, you're going out there to do a training of advise and assist. So wait a minute, what? So we ended up in Helmand province, a bunch of hungry paratroopers waiting for action. And we were thinking Lashkar Gah, they were trying to get us into the shaping operations for Marja. And the Brits didn't want us there. The Marines didn't want us there. So we ended up and down Highway 1, or not. I'm not sure if it's Highway 1, but it was one of the highways out there. Yeah. I just said Highway 1. I don't even know why, but
it's often Highway 1.
Right? Like maybe it was actually.
I talked to Vietnam vets. They got their Highway 1. Like there's always one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're going up and down the highway, and it's like you just clear every other culvert because there's definitely an IED in every single one of them. We had gotten into a small tick, which actually coincided with the release of the book. The book came out on Halloween, and that was our first. I did that intentionally. It was that was our first firefight. Was on Halloween back in 2009.
Talk us through it, Will. This is like your first time in combat. Like this is your first engagement, right?
First engagement. Yep. First
tell
ever.
Us.
And we're in a vehicle patrol. So we're mounted. And there's one of the MRAPs up front as a Cougar, and we're trailing behind. I'm with the RTO. We're in a Humvee, and we're all dual mounted out there. So we had a Mark 19 and a 240 up top, and I'm driving. And up front, you kind of see the gunner duck down a little bit, and then our gunner starts saying, "Hey, well, we're in contact," and you're just starting to hear the zips and the pops, and everything stopped. Burp, truck stops in front of us. We stop, trying to gauge the situation. These 2 Afghan police officers, you see their little Hilux or their little Ranger crashed off into this little side part of here. They got ambushed. It was this, they took off from us. They went off ahead. They got ambushed. It was really meant for them. Easy pickings, 2 guys in a truck.
Light skin. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and they It was a squad based. It was like 14 guys with a support by fire. So they had a PKM and RPGs. Yeah, out of a wood line, and we're here, and I'm like, all right, so we got this Mark 19 on our truck, but we're stuck to this village is in our way, and we're hearing stuff. So I'm like, hey, I look over, hey, sir, like we got to get around. We need to get our gun into the fight. And he's like, just don't get us killed. I mean, that's goes without saying, sir. But
famous last words.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. So you yell up to the gunner because you're coming around the truck. I know he was one of the kids that was from the 173rd, and he had some experience, but he's still, hey, we're moving. Don't hit the truck because we're coming around the backside of this MRAP and we're on a raised road. And as we're crossing around, I'm looking at the truck, and the gunner from the other truck, Specialist Brett Cannon, he grabs, he jumps up into the turret. So one of the scouts from underneath had thrown the M249 saw up to him. He couldn't, they were so close, he couldn't traverse the 50, or the 240 down on the guys. Yeah, we were on a raised road. And he jumps into the turret and just like smokes two guys right there. I'm just like, whoa, like this is real. This is it. And we come around the front of the truck, and here I am just trying to, in my head, it's, just because all this stuff, hey, stay in your lane. You're with the truck, watch for RPG trails, watch to see if you got muzzle flashes and stuff where you could call it up to the gunner. Like, look at the radio and ask them, hey, like stay listening. Like, here's all these things popping off at once, but like slow down and think through it. Don't get crazy. Don't start yelling. You already have enough people yelling in the truck right now. Stay in your lane. And I mean, it just ended up to where we came around. He started dumping Mark 19 into the wood line. And then the second I had thrown a box up to him, and it ended up to either where he either fumbled it, or whoever had loaded those boxes of, the 40 mic that's in there, which is high explosive grenade rounds that goes into the Mark 19. So it's just chucking them out there. They had loaded it upside down with the links wrong side up, and he chunk, and it's got nothing. So he moved to the 240, and because he's screaming, I can't get it up, and there's your largest casualty producing weapon and what we needed. But I guess we had pounded the wood line enough to where the 240 did its job. I was just looking from the truck, staying on the radio, hearing what's going on. We had dismounts come out. So we essentially had used the trucks for a support by fire. Mm-hmm. Dismounts came around and cleared through. And, I just started waiting for the casualty count to come in. You're like, all right, like that was a pretty good tick, but somebody's got to be hit. And crazy enough, nobody. There was one guy had a bullet hole in so Sergeant Anderson had right in the pocket of his armpit, which is weird because it was, this is how he was. And it's right through here like that, the smallest, lucky. Yeah. Any small deviation from there, and he would have been, it could have been right in here to where, pops around in your rib cage. I've seen it happen. But that, and one guy had something skip off his helmet, so it's, yeah. We even had our medic out there he saved one of the enemy. He had he didn't even want to, he's like, sure, just trying to kill us, and he's like, hey, save him. We're doing a battlefield interrogation after. And, yeah, okay. Roger. Yeah. And, we bring him back and toss him off at Lash. But it was just like the weirdest experience because we were coming back from, extended patrol that was out there. We were just wanting to get home. This whole thing pops off. But then it was really within like 3 hours after that, our platoon sergeant had it. And we threw 3 bodies or so into some bags, after we took pictures, and we tossed them in the trunk. And the next Afghan checkpoint, he was like, throw them at the doorstep. And we hucked them out, waved, and onto Lashkargan. We were, since it was Halloween, they had a little Halloween celebration. And one of our guys, Specialist Culp and Sergeant Cornegie, dressed up like pirates with some stuff they fashioned. Culp was the female persuasion, and the other one was who knows what. And they were just a bunch of scallywags joking around the fire and eating burgers with the British.
No shit. It's funny the way you mentioned, like, hey, you guys were coming back from an extended patrol. And I think this is definitely something you can't appreciate until you've been in combat, maybe, where, you watch a movie and some tick kicks off and everybody's like on it and they're ready.
Yeah.
But it really depends where you're at in your day or week or whatever. And like, you're just coming back from something else that happened, or you're bored out of your mind and you're complacent. You just want to get home and get a meal in. Like, yeah, you want to get back for the Halloween party or whatever it is. Yeah, there's something to that where you have to switch it on and really focus. As you were saying, like, hey, just stay in the moment. My role is to drive, set up support by fire, look for RPG trails. Like, that's not just a natural inclination for anybody.
And it did actually have a place in the Argandob later, because how that happened and how that went down, like, we're pulling apart here just so suddenly. You always thought in the back of your head, like, don't let your guard down.
Yeah.
That's how Bravo Company was. We were wound really tight. It was, regiment type tight. You knew. I mean, Bravo Company, you could not mess around, or you'd get booted. But everybody wanted to be part of Bravo Company. But I know that, in talking with the other guys and stuff, with talking with Andrew about it and everything, because Charlie Company had that same thing. Charlie was the best, and we're like, Bravo was the best. But that falls under that mentality of, if you don't train your guys up to think that way, what are they thinking then if you're going into a firefight? If you're in Charlie, man, I wish I was with Bravo. Those guys would have, really wrecked house. You really have to have faith in your guys and that you trained up to be the best, and essentially as you go in there or freaking kick that door in, you better be the best. Because if you're not, there's a lot weighing in the balance there.
How did it feel that night as you're sitting around the campfire? Like, this is your first time in an environment like that.
The highest of highs. I mean, when you start breaking it down and realizing what really just happened, that you could have been those guys that were lying on the pavement out there getting pictures taken of, and this is not meaning in the way of like pictures to where it's something derogatory. These were all, pictures being taken to be sent forward, for other agencies and stuff to go through. But that could have been you, and here you are to live another day. But you're in a country to where, that just made it very real. There are people out there that are ready, willing to go after you.
And then obviously you go from there, you're doing this highway patrol, people don't want you, and then they send you to the Arghandab. Like, what's that discussion like with leadership when they send you in?
So we didn't see a lot of everything, and this is how I kind of kept the book too, to try to keep it from the lower enlisted's perspective.
Love that.
During a lot of it. But in doing all of this and learning a lot, so Lieutenant Colonel Genio had, he was with McChrystal at one point. So with General McChrystal, and he was the ISAF commander at the time. And again, that's where he's like, hey, I just have a bunch of hungry paratroopers that are going up and down this highway on a training mission. Like, this is not what they need to be used for. Like, what do you have? And that's when we were handed the Argandob. That's 117 was there. They had already been, labeled as combat ineffective. They hadn't left the wire, I guess, in a month by the time we showed up. So we set out to refit at Fob Walton, and I was on that initial push in. And so we took a Chinook over there and did a side-by-side patrol, and going down, like, seeing them up at what became the OCD or OCCD. There's so many different terms to it, but a lot of the guys that were there know where I'm talking about. You could just tell, the look on the 117 guys' faces, and how they presented themselves, how they looked. You could just tell that they had been through hell, and getting anywhere within the valley just to go down to where we started actually being able to get into the village. It was very deliberate. It was very slow. We're like, what's going on here? Why? It wasn't very long before we were there that we found out, and it was just that we knew better than to go anywhere in that valley mounted, that was probably the best decision that was ever made. Was all breaking up into what light infantry does, which is usually a very heavy load on one's back for a very long time.
Yeah, the irony of that term, huh?
Right.
So, well, what's your unit's mission going into that part of the Argandab? Like as you set out.
I mean, everything that we were told is just, hey, we're going in, denying enemy movement, assisting the local populace who's being harassed, and really it was a question of who's harassing who. When you have strikers with search and destroy painted on the side, and a lot of they were very aggressive, the tactics. I know there's that kind of stems in some of the controversy and stuff. I know we're actually talking, I brought it up to my editor at Casemate, but there's a Canadian professor at the Canadian War College out there, and he had written a 3-book series about the Argandob, and they wouldn't publish it. Like, so as normal, he would normally publish through the college. They would not publish it due to some of the names and some of the things that were mentioned there. Canadian General Menard. I know there was General Nick Carter. There's just a whole lot of stuff that was pulled apart in there, and they're like, no. But with talking with some of the editors at Casemate and reaching out and stuff, there's word that those are coming in actual book form instead of just a PDF now. So I think this is cracking, and this is really about to start unfurling in front of people just for what it was.
Could you take us to a couple of the harder moments that you guys saw in the Arghandab, and just like, I don't know, the ones you think back on, the ones that really impact people that may have been tough to write about even? I can only imagine how hard it was to write this book.
Yeah, I mean, the main ones you have there, probably the worst. I mean, it's probably three days worth of incidents, just one after another, was really kicked off with a private bets. And we're coming back from, an extended patrol out at, I think we were at Antenna Checkpoint, but we were in and out of the town of Diakache. And there was always, it kind of seemed to be the epicenter. That's where, Sergeant Thomas was hit. That's where, anytime we went into Diakache, we started experiencing one thing or another. It was and what they had done is there was an IED belt around. It really was the epicenter, and that's where the cover picture and stuff comes from. Is that was actually in that town where they established a Cop Brunkhorst. But this particular, I guess this particular there was a bunch of incidents within these 3 days. It was kicked off with bets. We're coming back during the night, and just walking back to Cop Johnson, following through, and there's a muffled boom. It was 2 people in front of me, and this kid goes down yelling, screaming, holding his leg. Me and Doc run up, and it was a toe popper that was buried too deep in the ground, so it shattered his ankle. Did some other, just small stuff, but yeah, I guess he had some shrapnel that came up and hit him in the inner thigh, and he's screaming about his ball sack. And Doc, I come over and I'm like, Doc, what's going on with him? What's up? I got to send up the call, for the bird. And he's like, everything's still here. I'm like, what? And it went from this moment of, high concern to like, hey, shut up, man. Like, you're going to get us killed out here. You're giving away our position. So we kind of berated him a little bit, and I make the call, and the bird comes in, and we load him up, and the bird takes off. And one of the other, since we had been out for a while, they had to do battle drill assessment on what had happened. So the platoon sergeant gets a squad together. They roll out and take over our position, and we go back to Cop Johnston. Well, as the sun's coming up in the morning, they start looking around them, and they realize like they're literally in the middle of a freaking minefield. There's just flags everywhere. They're seeing tripwire stuff. It's just like, holy heck, like, how did they land the freaking bird in here and not just disappear? And how do you clear an HLZ? Myself and the Private Martinick, he was one of the fisters that was with us. We did a zigzag pattern. If we had done the zigzag pattern anywhere else, it would have been toast. So just a lot of things that came together for us there. But sun's coming up. There's an EOD coming with the commander from another location. I know it gets tricky in the book too. There's a lot of fog of war here. And there's a patrol that's going to meet one of the teams is going to push out, meet the patrol, bring them in to where they are and start pulling apart the mines, getting everything marked, figuring out what happened the night before. And Sergeant Lee, he's crossing over and he grabs the mine hound from the kid that was doing it. He's like, "You're not moving fast enough." And he goes to cross across the canal. There was a little spot to where it was small enough to where he could cross. Who's thinking of an IED in the water? Well, they had figured it out, and they had wrapped it. What ended up saving him was the fact that they hadn't mastered it yet. So the charge didn't fully go off. So a lot of the same thing, what happened with that kid the night before, the charge partially went off, broke his ankle. And here he is kind of, down in this little wadi, rolling around in a creek bed. And, and then it's just the patrol that's coming to them with EOD, Specialist Edinger, boom, that one went off.
Another one. So you got
another one instantly, leg gone, and it's just one after another. And I can't remember exactly because as we were pulling apart this timeline, this is where there's two trains of thoughts here. But as this is happening, a huge charge goes off. That other patrol that was moving with the commander that continued on to Diakashe, the bomb team there had set up a false IED site or false bomb site to where it looked like, hey, this is where they had been watching our TTPs. They had been watching how EOD was utilized. And instead of the team going to check it out, Sergeant Brunkhorst was there. And he goes to move in the same type of pattern that they did and hits the real charge and just completely disappears to where they had to call it Dust One. They could not find Sergeant Brunkhorst's body. I think what they found was a rib cage and side plates.
And so Will, are you saying that the enemy had set up almost like a fake area that would lure us in to go and excavate almost the mines, and then knowing the path that we would take to go in, put a massive one in that route?
Yes. Yeah. They were, really masters of human psychology. It wasn't that the charges or anything were anything too complex. It was the fact that they really knew how humans moved, how they thought. We would come across stuff, and it wasn't until you started getting that mindset. Have you ever seen where hunters and stuff will kind of cut the brush away to create a light path to sort of have like a deer move to the side of somewhere? It was like that.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. They were on it.
That is and at this point, there's no gunfire. This is just IEDs.
Small isolated incidents. Like I was saying, we had one to where someone chucked a grenade over the wall at us and we just went full on in it. We came across a bomb team that was, actually it was a suicide bomb team. They were shaving one of the guys out in the orchard and getting ready to put a vest on him. And we found, I think it was like 40 some odd initiators in that orchard. They had stuffed it into a hole in the tree, so it was like they had little caches everywhere and stuff. So you wouldn't get into a gunfight in our AO unless you came across them in the middle of something. Yeah. They wouldn't attack us directly because of just how tight we were. Yeah. We never gave them that. We never gave them enough slack.
I'm thinking just in this 3-day period you're talking about that starts with bets, like at this point you're describing bets gets hit in the night. The next day, you've got this sequence of IEDs. There's no enemy contact in that period of time, right? This is just IEDs you're wrestling with.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Our battalion, our battalion commander, so he flew out, Colonel Jones. So this was another part of the controversy in there is our command team got, They got removed. They got
Like
removed.
replaced?
Yes, they got
Fired.
replaced.
Wow.
It was right after Specialist Johnson was hit. So they got replaced back in December, early January. I had gone on leave, like right after that was one of the weirdest things actually is, here I am on a patrol with Johnston. This happens. And within 2 or 3 days, I rotate out for my mid-tour. And it's the guys that were coming back from mid-tour that they're waiting on the next bird into the valley so they could be dropped off. That was when, the incident with Johnston happened, and they're running the roll 3 down in CAF to find out, we had more than just Johnston hitting that. The one that hit the initiator, the toe popper, Private Towery, he's down at roll 3, and they're asking him like, hey, what happened? What's going on? Who was hit? Like, what happened out there? So for them to come back to that too, they left during either Helmand or Walton, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we're coming back to this new AO, and we've already experienced casualties. So to be on that high and then that extreme low, especially the day after Christmas, and here I am going out. It takes about a month, and as I'm coming back, there's a whole new. I think it was Command Sergeant Major Sturtevant was on the plane ride back there. And there was all talk of the command team being replaced and stuff. And I'm like, wait, what? And here's when it all starts to hit, and to me, it doesn't mean much because I'm just the kid on the ground. I'm just either a private or a specialist at the time. And all I want to do is, get back there, find out what the heck's happened since I've been gone, make sure all my stuff's still there. Yeah, it was interesting for sure.
How was your mid-tour leave coming off of the day after Christmas event?
I had a little bit of time to decompress in Kuwait. Not much, and it was lonely.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I kind of isolated on there, and going back home, saw family, and they're like, how is it over there? I'm like, well, just came back from this, and I could talk about it. And they were all just like, wide-eyed, like, holy crap.
Yeah. That's heavy. That's heavy to go back and knowing you're going back down to that place.
I didn't have an issue with that. Matter of fact, I knew I only had 2 weeks, so it was like spend a week with the family, and then I went up snowboarding for a week, and I'm like, I'm just going to blow a bunch of money at this ski resort and have fun, because who knows?
Yeah.
I missed my connection flight in Atlanta, so I had an extra. Yeah, I'm glad it came down to where it was close, and I'm like, an extra day out here. I'll just slowly walk to the gate because I only had like an hour. So they put me up. The USO put me up, and the next day, I ended up in the international terminal, and I went to the sushi place that was there. And the craziest thing is somebody paid for my meal.
Nice.
And I went over to say hi, and he introduced himself, and it's like Colonel Grossman. I had no idea.
No way.
I had no idea, who it was or who I was talking to, but then coming back and I say, yeah, some guy paid for my meal, a Colonel Grossman, and the guys were like, are you kidding me? He had actually spoken to Bravo Company 2508 before they had left. I don't know if it was before they left on the previous one, but he had spoken to our particular unit, and our guys were like, you dumbass. Like,
how awesome though that he did that. That's great that he did that. Just small token. Cool. Damn. All right. So will you go back? Please take us through something else that goes on downrange in that fight. I mean, I know from the book, you guys sustained 50% casualties, I think.
Yeah, it was, I think it was actually somewhere, I always said 52 in the interviews, but then one of the guys pulled me aside and he's like, I think it's either 54 or 56. Like, it's just, I know it was over. So, I mean, you take half of people and you say, what's an infantry company? Roughly 200 people. And you're like, hey, 100 of you guys are coming back very different. Some aren't coming back at all, but every single one of you is going to be affected in one way or another.
What was your closest call?
My closest, Honestly, that would probably be, I mean, if you wanted to pull it apart and everything, from what I could see, probably the one that Johnston was in. I had stepped right over that particular initiator maybe 20 seconds prior. I had just set up the long whip and was calling in our next frontline trace or our next position when it went off. And it's just that we had gone over it with the Minehound. EOD had kind of followed the lead team in. I was in the middle of the stack, followed them in, and so it's rear team coming in as I'm setting all this up, and that goes off. But I mean, you have you also have the suicide bomber with Sergeant Thomas. And we talked about it briefly before, but
Yeah.
we're going in to do a KLE, so a key leader engagement with the village elder out there. And really, I don't even know if it was the village elder. It was just some like ridiculously old guy who we're coming through the area, and we bring the interpreter up and they wave to him, the LT and stuff, and the guy spoke perfect English. Like, I mean, like, so he had actually studied at Oxford in England.
Wow.
Yeah, and like, why are you here? To be back in Afghanistan. I don't totally know. At this point, I kind of question. I'd love to know everything behind it. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe one day. Well, I don't know. That's for. But we're in there in this little humble compound to where there's a Russian missile. Like, I'm not kidding. Like the sickle and everything, leaning against the wall. And the LT's like, "Do you want us to get rid of that? It's been there forever. It's not going to go off. It's okay." And we're there for maybe 5 minutes, and they're at a T intersection, and Sergeant Thomas has the squad blocking off this T intersection to just kind of monitor who's coming through town. And one of the positions where Private Flake was, it's on a machine gun, and there's an Afghan police officer with him. Somebody kind of comes up and he's like, "Something's wrong here. This guy is something's not right. Something doesn't look right about this guy. He looks nervous. He's kind of shuffling towards us." And he yells at him. The guy keeps coming. He yells again, and as he's yelling again, the Afghan police officer there kind of draws down on him. And the guy puts his hands up and goes to his knees and just explodes. He had taped the initiators to his knees, and he had a vest on full of ball bearings and nails and everything else you could imagine. And crazy enough, Flake being, maybe between 10 and 20 feet from him, nothing, not a scratch. But the squad leader, maybe another, I don't know, 20 meters back, Sergeant Thomas got a ball bearing that just obliterated, went right through his body armor, just through and through.
Are you
Collapsed
serious?
one of his. What's that?
It hit a guy like behind the closer person.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe like Spall or something. It just, because I mean, it's just like they make all this homemade stuff. And I know the recollection from Flake is just, he's like, I just see a rib cage flying my way through the air. To see someone disappear like that, and when I get, so this thing goes off and we're inside the compound in this KLE, and it's like, whoa, like we flow out to find out what's going on out there. And, the medic is with Sergeant Thomas, who this ball bearing through, collapses his lung. So he's out there trying to needle decompress his chest. And then behind him, Specials Ross was on a 240 position, and he's kind of sitting there like, nursing whatever. And I'm like, "What's going on, man?" And it almost separated his shoulder. So he had another piece of something ping off and cut right through. And they were like, the guys at Walter Reed were just like, if it had been any different to there, your arm would have just busted right off. Any small variation there. So I mean, he was hit. That's when he kind of left us. But it's just incident after incident to where and that's the one time that we didn't have pager on station. So a lot of what we had was combat search and rescue. So Pedro with the Air Force, those PJs are awesome.
Yeah,
man. But this one particular time they sent out regular Army. I mean, it took them like 45 minutes. Doc really, I mean, he saved Sergeant Thomas for sure. I mean, he ended up re-needle decompressions. And from what I understand, the guy flatlined on the bird on the way to CAF and they brought him back. So yeah, just an overall horrible place to be in.
What was the tough question, but what was the most kind of courageous or bravest thing that you saw there?
There was so many of them. Holy crap. I mean, like that incident alone, one of the local nationals, our interpreter Gucci was with us.
Gucci, that's a good name.
Yeah, no, I don't know what the whole deal is with the Italian fashion houses, but we had a Gucci and Armani. It was Johnny.
Is it because they wore all the gear? Like, did they have like knockoff Gucci stuff or what? No,
I don't know why you just, and he was just an overall good guy, though. We had him, I think he was the commander's interpreter when we were in Helmand, and he had switched out at one point, but he had trained up he had been attached with an ODA at one point, So, I mean, we kind of trusted him tactically too. He knew to a point, what to do, what not to do. He definitely knew how to handle a weapon. We ended up tossing him I know you're not supposed to, but we ended up tossing him the Afghan police officer's weapon, because as all this is going down, people are popping their heads out in DK. Everyone is at, level 10, they're here. And here he is rolling around, sticking the AK in their face and like, get back inside, we're just like, go to work, man.
I hear that a lot, actually. The more folks I've interviewed, like they'll say, we had this interpreter. He was a great guy. We trusted him. We gave him a weapon. Yeah. We weren't supposed to, but you just build that level of trust.
But I mean, really, anyone who left that wire, just due to what everything that had happened out there and how it was, there were some people, and this didn't make it into the book at one point, but there were some people, we had a cook attached to us, and he doesn't even leave the wire, and he's talking about creating a wound on himself as he's cooking the meals just so he can get out of there. And he says, it's only a matter of time till we get overrun and like this. And it's just like, what? Like, jeez. You gotta be kidding me. So you're going to slice a finger off so you could leave? Like,
that's sad.
There's another guy ended up, a weapons malfunction when he was at home. He ended up shooting himself in the leg.
At home, like in the States or in his room?
Yeah, on Midtour. Yeah. One on Midtour didn't even come back. But I mean, that's the level of what it was. The courage for the guys that actually, you would hear it, and I put it in a chapter too. I wasn't even aware of it. I was so busy as an RTO trying to keep comms up, and then the amount of patrols I had to be on, because you always had to have communications.
Always had to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was on so many of them. We started towards the end, we started flipping off with myself and the Fister. Just because it was, manning was a problem. At one point, we were down to 28 guys and still having to do a patrol, still having 4 towers to man and an ECP. It just became almost impossible. But the guys that could face that, that takes someone special to do that. Either that or downright
somebody crazy. What, for you, writing a book, I think in general is hard, but something like this close to home and people that you served with, what was the hardest part about writing this for you?
Honestly, the hardest part was wanting to get it right and make sure that it was right. And it was something that was going to be that the guys could hold to their, it wasn't about me. And, and it really hasn't been the whole way along. That's been something that's been rewarding to see, and help foster that with the other guys. I know me and Andrew had talked along the way as well, and ended up making some introductions and stuff, and ended up under the casemate umbrella as well. but helping guys go through that and face that again, because a lot of the people that we would talk to and be like, oh man, like we're going to put this down on paper, like, and having them bring that feedback back and say, dude, like I'm getting the smells of the valley coming through as I'm reading this stuff and proofreading it. And I think, you sure you want to do this? But at the same time, like afterwards, everybody's kind of looked at it, and it's been a way for them to unpackage the trauma. I know for me, I'd always been able to talk about it, but I never really faced all of it until I slowed down enough to write a book about it. It wasn't, it was challenging to write it, but it wasn't as challenging as you think because it really came from here. So in bringing those stories forward and unpackaging like some of this, I've got tears just rolling down my face as I'm writing these stories.
I have to imagine that. Yeah.
But knowing that you have to go through that, those emotions are going to transfer over to the pages. And there's some stuff that I wrote in there that I, honest to God, completely forget about from time to time, just because like it's almost like my mind's like okay with it. They're like, you know what? I'm at peace now. You've gone through that and you've sort of seen it from all these different angles. You understand it. And it's okay to just let that go. So I think that's been the most therapeutic part for a lot of the guys. And it's good to go back and tell these stories with one another, because we grow through facing hard things, and that I can't think of much harder than what we experienced out there. And so if you have someone that's done that, they've been forged. It's not, where a lot of people PTSD or they're the broken veteran. I hate that stereotype that they put out there, because we're not, and even the ones that are still having a tough time, and maybe it's, that day-to-day battle to get up and roll out of bed is tough for them. They just don't realize it yet. They have people that care, and they've been through something tough. It doesn't have to knock you down for good.
To that point, Andrew had mentioned, as he was reconnecting with a lot of these guys he had served with, like the valley, as he put it, is just still there. And really, I talked to a lot of vets, I've heard a lot of stories, and not everybody carries that maybe like a negative weight, the way that Andrew might have been describing some of it. That it really is this place they don't want to think about again. They don't want to go back to. It really has altered the course of their life in a pretty dramatic way. Did you also notice that as you were talking to guys?
With some of them, yeah. There's a few of them that I couldn't get in touch with, to where I've tried to at least figure out where they're at in life. And they're like, man, that guy has gone off the reservation. We can't find him. He doesn't talk to anybody. We know he's still around because he still pops up here and there, but I'm hoping that's one day, it's he either comes around, or he finds peace in his own way.
Yeah. Love that. Well, damn. Will, this has been awesome. I got a couple questions I ask everybody. Just two quick questions at the end. One is there anything that you carried with you when you were downrange that had sentimental value, good luck charm, or something that somebody gave you that you just wanted to have on you?
Oh man. They're long gone now. But I definitely had the set of lucky boots.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah. There was a set of boots that I just, and I actually still have this one, and it's over there, but
can you, is it small enough to grab?
It is.
Yeah. Let's see it, man. That'd be awesome.
That one right there.
So for people listening who can't see, it's the 82nd Airborne patch.
So that patch not only was on every patrol and stuff, but was on every jump that I ever did too.
That's cool. That's really cool. So, and what's the deal with the boots? Like, are they the ones you wore like every patrol?
Most of the ones that were like, I would try to stick with that particular set of boots. Yeah. That was just like, these things have not done me wrong. And we're just going to stick with this particular pair.
Was there a day where you were like, damn, these things are lucky? Like what happened that made them have this special value to you?
It literally was. So I think this particular set was the set that I had worn, I had them modified for SOPSI. They call them the SOPSI specials out there. And I mean, they were worn down and then I had them resold again before we left. But they were a set of Belleville 390 Deserts that they were lighter than Nikes. Because they switched out to a super, super lightweight shell and, or the sole on the bottom, but they were awesome. You could run in them. It was like wearing moccasins. Cool. You were nice and quiet in them too, instead of tramping around. But yeah, that was the lucky set of boots. Matter of fact, awesome. They might actually be at the museum too. If they still had leather on them, they're over there.
If it wasn't worn off. Okay. And then the last question I ask everybody looking back, and I know we didn't even cover all of your career. Obviously, we're just talking about the Arghandab, but as you look back on your career and that decision you made to go in later in life in your mid-20s, looking back, would you do it again?
Oh, absolutely. Especially even like if someone was like, would you do the Argandab over? Absolutely. It's not just me who said this, but there's been a lot of the guys who have said it, that as hard as it was and as tough as it was, a lot of them understand that, like, at least myself, I can only speak for myself, is that I felt like that was where I needed to be there. I was right where I needed to be at the time, and there was a purpose on why I was there. I wasn't sure why. God, trust me, I have no idea why. But at the same time, I'm glad I went through it. I'm glad that I got to meet the particular group of people that I served with over there. I can't say that I've ever really met another group like that ever again in my life.
Is there a world 20 years from now where you would go back there if it were safe to do so? And like walk those places again?
I've looked into it. There was somebody who, through social media, we've got Afghans that are fans too. He popped up on social and sent me a drive-by right where Cop Ware used to be. And you could only see the big, I don't know if they call them tri-wall barriers or whatever. There's a few of them still sitting out in this field and you can see the remnants, but it's Cop Ware now is just dissolving back down into the dirt. The HESCO barriers are gone. And it was just the weirdest thing to see. But he was 8 years old at the time when we were there. And, to hear from those people, and we actually heard from another one too, through social media, those younger kids and stuff, we stood for something out there to them. And they were actually extremely appreciative of what we did. They saw us, I think really that particular valley, that conflict area, that year that we were there, or that almost a year, I think it was 9 months or so. I don't think there was any way around it other than having to bleed to win that battle, and in the way of seeing that, like the local populace, it's a warrior culture. They respect things a little differently. And when they saw us side by side and actually like putting in effort and experiencing losses, but not degrading to the point of being someone who had hate towards them and was still trying to do something, for the greater good, or to at least, if anything, give them a peaceably night's sleep.
Yeah.
It meant something to them.
That's awesome. Will, how can people find you on social media?
The easiest way, Damn the Valley Book. Yeah, damnthevalleybook.com. That's kind of there's just all your links in there, but I mean, it's just at Damn the Valley Book across social. There's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. And we had a TikTok go viral. It was like something like 9 million views or something on this.
Nice.
Oh yeah. No, it's a bunch of guys recorded stuff. So during the whole formulation of this, there's a whole Google Drive with stuff. And I've been posting for over a year and it's all stuff from the Argandob. So, I mean, go check it out. Between that and, you have the Devil's Playground there too. Those two books, the three, Bravo Company as well, but damnthevalleybook.com. I'm also LinkedIn, William Yeske, W Yeske on Twitter, if you do that sort of thing. I'm getting away from that. It's a lot of toxic stuff out there.
Ain't it true? Okay. Hey, Will, thanks so much, man. This was a blast. I really appreciate it. And thanks for taking the time to have written the book. And I know it's helping a lot of people. And I think probably longer term, I hope some of those guys who didn't connect with you when you're 60 or 70 at some reunion, they show up.
Yeah. Thanks for helping me share the story and getting it out there. I really appreciate it.
No,
sure.
Right. All right. Sorry, Will, go ahead. So you've also got another project you're working on.
So there's a little side project out there that I kind of started through this whole thing, and it was I unofficially launched the first podcast episode with Andrew Bragg, but it's called Veteran Success Story. Um, and it really has to do with something that I'm pivoting to. I wrote a book 5 years prior to Damn the Valley that had to do with things that I found to be successful within college and with everyday life. You know, starting out at the foundation of like fitness and eating, and then going into, I mean, you were saying Tools for Titans when we were off camera.
Love it. Love that book.
Indistractable. I mean, I had an hour commute to school. So I would get on long form podcasts, and then I would start reading these books that were being pushed out by there. And, I mean, I finished business school in 2.5 years. And really a half semester there was a throwaway anyway. Then I went on to do some stuff over at Cornell. And then I was like, let's shoot for the stars and let me see if I can, get some classes over at Columbia. And now I'm freaking Columbia alum. So from nothing to Ivy League, that's just the difference on what these success frameworks and what the military can do if you use those type of disciplines and habits to sort of accelerate yourself. So I want to have other people on. I know there's that episode with Andrew, which didn't follow the framework or anything. It was really just a conversation with us, but I want to start having other people on. Maybe you can suggest a few people and stuff, but in talking about what they've found to be helpful from their time in service and translation over to the civilian side of things. So yeah,
Cool.
Spotify, YouTube, again, the rest of them just following the same formula that worked on here. And it's at Veteran Success Story.
Got it. Awesome. Thanks so much, man. I hope you enjoyed that combat story. The Arghandab Valley is a nasty place, clearly. So we heard from not just Will, but also Andrew Bragg before. And I think we're going to hear a lot more with some of these other books coming out. As always, you can check out our newsletter at combatstory.com/newsletter. And wherever you are in the world, I hope you have a good rest of your day, week, weekend, wherever you may be. And as always, stay safe. And you can stay tuned, and we're going to play that clip that Will mentioned that went viral on TikTok if you're interested. Thanks again, y'all. Stay safe.
Okay. A couple things have happened today. One, Rangers crashed a helicopter. Not unlike a movie you've probably seen, right behind the steering. We've been sitting here since 2 o'clock this morning. We've been attacked about 30 times. RPG almost hit me and my boys right over here, about 10, 15 meters away. Scared the crap out of me. And now basically we're just waiting on them to attack again because the sun's starting to go down. Typically they attack around this time. We're ready for them now. We got the saw over here, and we got Rangers fiddling around the helicopter. I don't know if they're working on it. There they are. Go ahead and get the gun up. Guess it's gonna be a long night.